Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Jaya Giri Vanadhari Gopi Jana Balaba Jaya Giri Vanadhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Bonachari Yamuna Tira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Jaya Giri Vanadhari Gopi Jana Balaba Jaya Giri Vanadhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Bonachari Yamuna Tira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Deva, 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 Jaya Guru Deva. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa. Paribhakacharya Astradhara Satasi Srimad Abhay Charanar Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Paribhakacharya Astradhara Satasi Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopinath Syamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Shri Vrindavandam ki Jai. Simaya Pradam ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtana ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shrinvatam Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanya Pridyantasto Hyabadrani Vidhunoti Suhitratam Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nicham Bhagavate Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Readings from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 10, text number 40. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Gyatam Mama Purai Vaitad. Rishina Karunatmana Yatri Madanayor Vagbir Vibram So Nugraha Krita. Recite, gentlemen. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Gyatva Mama Purai Vaitad Rishina Karunatmana Rishina Karunatmana Hiramo Nugraha Jati Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Gyata Mama Purai Vaitad Rishina Karunatmana Yatri Madanayor Vagbir Vimram So Nugrahat Krita. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Gyata Mama Purai Maivad Rishina Karunatmana Yatri Madanayor Vagbir Vibramsho nugraha krita. Ladies? Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Yata Mama Purai Daivan Rishina Karunatmana Yat Srimadanayor Vagbir Vibramsho Nugraha Krita. Someone else? Okay. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Gyatam, everything is known. Mama, to me. Pura, in the past. Eva, indeed. Etat, this incident. Rishina, by the great sage Narada. Karuna Atmana, because he was very, very kind to you. Yat, which? Sri Madanayoho, who had become mad after material opulence and had thus become blind. Vagbihi, by words or by cursing. Vibramshaha, falling down from the heavenly planet to become Arjuna trees here. Anugraha kritaha, this was a great favor done by him to you. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the great saint Narada Muni is very merciful. By his curse he showed the greatest favor to both of you, who were mad after material opulence and who had thus become blind. Although you fell from the higher planet Swargaloka and became trees, you were most favored by him. I knew of all these incidents from the very beginning. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is now confirmed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the curse of a devotee is also to be regarded as mercy. As Krishna, God is all good. A Vaishnava is also all good. Whatever he does is good for everyone. This is explained in the following verse. I'm going to move that a minute. So, unless you've been following along, you may not get the story. So it's always important to have a recap of where we've been in the story. So I'm going to just take a moment to just briefly summarize the past few verses. There were these two sons of powerful demigods, powerful demigod of wealth named Kuvera. And they were sporting in a garden lake, naked in a drunken state. And their names were Nala Kuvera and Manigriva. So then suddenly, the great saint Narada Muni appears on the scene. And because they are intoxicated, they shamelessly did not try to cover themselves or offer respect. Now, Narada Muni is not just an ordinary saint. He's considered to be the original spiritual master and the primary guru of devotional service as the son of the universal creator, Lord Brahma. So as a result of these two men's behavior, Narada Muni cursed them to become two Arjuna trees that would have to stand naked for the next 100 years, and this is not just human calculated 100 years, it's 100 years or more in the calculations of a demigod, which is hundreds of times more the length of time than in earthling human years. So it's an interesting fun fact about Arjuna trees is that they are a native tree to India that grows in sandy, moist soil. And this Arjuna tree has been used for thousands of years as a medicine for many things, but particularly for heart problems, people who have heart conditions. So I found it really interesting that although the properties of the Arjuna trees are used to treat a physical ailment, in this story, Nalakuvara and Manigriva becoming Arjuna trees turns out to be a cure for their spiritual hearts as well. That is, their bondage in the form of Arjuna trees cured their ignorance that was covering their hearts and preventing them from seeing both themselves and Krishna face to face. In the English language, the term for the Arjuna tree is the white Maruda tree. I'm not familiar with that tree, but apparently it also exists in English-speaking countries. Anyway, back to the story. So the reason these two sons of Kumvara were put into these Arjuna tree bodies was because, like the trees, they were behaving in such an ignorant condition that they didn't even realize that their behavior was offensive. And this is what happens when our consciousness is covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. We lose our power of discrimination to see clearly what is appropriate behavior. We act without considering how others will be affected by our behavior and the consequences of our behavior, particularly in relationship to saintly people. So this is the condition of most of us. We cannot appreciate the saintliness of a devotee because our minds are completely intoxicated by material consciousness. It doesn't occur to us to respect someone who has more spiritual knowledge than we. In fact, we barely appreciate what spiritual knowledge is, or that it has any value. And so, as in many ways, a pure devotee has to tolerate us being offended in so many ways, despite their relentless efforts to try to share this knowledge of love of God with them, with others. So it is to be expected that if you are trying to wake up the conditioned soul from the intoxication of the modes of passion and ignorance, then you can expect that you are going to be insulted regularly, and that's a natural propensity of a person in the mode of ignorance, is that they are expert at insulting others. So it just goes with the territory if you are engaged in preaching. It is interesting that one of the last things Jesus Christ said before he died on the cross was, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." And he didn't blame those that persecuted him because he understood that the people didn't know better. They were ignorant. Likely, if they knew better and they understood who he was, they probably would have treated him better. But he understood, Jesus understood, that they didn't know better. They were acting out of ignorance. And he also understood that the people who were torturing and killing him, they were simply instruments in the hands of material nature, not who they really were, that they were being used or as an instrument. Jesus also knew that if something was happening to him, it meant that Krishna allowed it to happen to him because it was divinely ordained that he should suffer. He knew that right from the beginning. We says in the Bhagavad Gita, not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Supreme. So that it happens, that Krishna allows it to happen, means, and this goes for all of us, this means that we were meant to get that reaction. This final prayer of Jesus demonstrates his incredible compassion for the fallen souls, that he was willing to try to bring spiritual knowledge to others, knowing that he was probably risking his life in order to do so. Prabhupada, same thing. He risked his life at an elderly age to come to the West, beating all odds, to try and inject Krishna consciousness into this very fallen civilization. And like Lord Jesus, like Srila Prabhupada and Narada Muni, they understood that a person under the mode of ignorance, he doesn't know how to behave. And so there's no point getting angry with him because he just doesn't know. Their bad behavior is just a symptom of their own ignorance. It does tell you something about a person if they behave ignorantly, that they are under the modes. The same thing comparatively as if you have a pet dog and it comes into your home and he just poops on your living room carpet. There's no point trying to have a discussion with the dog that, this is an inappropriate behavior, really shouldn't do that. You're kind of wasting your time. The dog is in ignorance, so he's not going to really understand your best technique in trying to explain to him something. So the best thing you have to do is just keep the dog outside. Forgive him, clean up the mess, and move on and continue your life. Fortunately, in the case of Nalakuvera and Manigriva, the seeming curse that Narada gave them ended up being a blessing in disguise, because by standing up in tree bodies for so many years, they had nothing else to do but to contemplate all the sinful activities they had committed for many, many years. And this is very instructive for us, that by constantly remembering and taking ownership, that means taking responsibility for our own sinful behavior that has created our current suffering, we become purified so that eventually we become qualified to be able to see Krishna face to face. And this is the Krishna conscious process, for us to deeply consider the reason we are suffering in this material world because of our ignorant behavior in the past. We don't get here unless we have committed some offense to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It doesn't matter so much what the apparent cause of our suffering is in the present moment. The ultimate cause is always that we neglected Krishna's presence in our lives due to some form of ignorance. We neglected to offer respect to everything in the material world as Krishna's creation, perhaps. We neglected to respect everyone in the material world as parcel of Krishna. We neglected offering respect to our own bodies as temples of Krishna, and so we used them to dump all kinds of unclean substances in them, like meat, fish, eggs, and intoxicants like alcohol, coffee, tea, cigarettes, and junk food. We neglected to take care of our possessions as Krishna's property, and so they get lost or damaged. And it goes on. You can name a million ways that we have ignored Krishna to invite the suffering that we're experiencing. So just like Nalakuvera and Manigriva, we are also bound up in a particular body, in a particular situation, due to our past sinful actions. And the way to become purified is for us to constantly reflect on our attitude and behavior and how that keeps us from seeing Krishna face to face. This is the goal of Bhakti Yoga, to see Krishna's hand working in our lives at every moment. So I've been writing a prisoner at San Quentin prison for about a year. And he has a life prison sentence. And he's almost 60 years old. So he started coming in and out of prisons when he was a teenager. And so he's been in the prison system for probably over 40 years. And as he reflects, he's an incredibly profuse writer, and he loves to read, which is his way of coping. But he writes often that his mind, even after 40 years, his mind continues to ruminate on all the stupid things he did that got him into prison. He daily beats his breast that he was cursed to live in the environment with people such as the inmates he's surrounded by, many of whom are so ignorant still, even though they are suffering in an imprisoned state, they still are so ignorant that they try to pretend to be masters of their lives. So, through the years, due to his being confined in a space of about 5 foot by 10 feet in a prison cell, he has sought comfort through learning and spiritual searching. So he attends every worship service from every religion that ever comes. He's just like this year, he attended something like 72 spiritual group worship services. And he got a little award for that because nobody does that. And he's so hungry for spiritual knowledge. And he has learned from this process to recite many prayers. And from that reciting of prayers, he has learned that when he recites prayers glorifying God, that his heart becomes happy. Now, if you live in an imprisoned state like he does, most inmates don't trust each other very much. They're used to being backstabbed and sometimes killed and sometimes robbed and beaten up. So they keep their distance. So they live very, very isolated lives. It's extremely austere. They live a monastic life almost, except for the environment is highly toxic. And their movement in the material is very, very limited. So unless they turn within them and explore the universe within themselves, they become overwhelmed often with despair, depression, and even madness. Some people hang themselves to think, oh my God, I've got to live another day of this. It is so horrible. If you ever get a chance to read the story of how the Russians began the Hare Krishna movement, salted bread, it's just a must read from a Krishna conscious perspective, what it's like to live in such an environment. So the blessing in this inmate's case is that he learned to pray for help to God. And because he began to seek out the source of his life in earnest, Krishna guided him to look within himself for answers. And then Krishna guided him to write to the ISKCON prison ministry. And he got the opportunity to actually see Krishna face to face in the form of a beautiful photo of Rukmini Dwarkanath, and to hear and speak and write the holy name. So this was a great opportunity after so many years of performing austerities and suffering for many years and reflecting on his sinful activities. He became purified enough just to have a little taste of Krishna consciousness. So in the same way, in the case of Nalakuvara and Manigriva, after hundreds of demigod years of their performing austerities while standing naked in the scorching heat and pinching cold, they got the opportunity to see Krishna while he was performing his pastimes of being tied to a mortar and dragging it between the two Arjuna trees with the two brothers living inside. Krishna, dragging the mortar in between the two trees, uprooted them and broke the spell or the curse of Narada Muni, and out they came, in their effulgent state. So Krishna made this arrangement in this verse. He's saying, I made this arrangement in order to fulfill my obligation to make good or fulfill the words of the great devotee Narada Muni. And by the time Nalakuvara and Manigriva were released from their tree bodies, they had become so purified that by their having meditated on their past sinful deeds and by performing such great austerity, standing naked in the body of a tree for so many hundreds of years, that when they emerged from these tree bodies, they were so effulgent that their bodies shone in all directions. Just due to their austerities, they had become transformed from being intoxicated fools who had no respect for Krishna and his devotees. They were transformed into effulgent devotees of Krishna. Now, when Prabhupada was on the planet, many of the guests who used to come to visit him, even in this garden in the back of the temple, They used to remark that they saw the devotees as bright-faced. And this is still an accurate description of Hare Krishna devotees today who strictly follow the process of bhakti yoga. Their aura actually emanates light. And people who have some piety, they can appreciate that. People who meet a devotee who strictly follows the 4 regulative principles, chants 16 rounds every day, only eats pure vegetarian food offered to Krishna in love and devotion, and who is engaged in pure devotional service is attractive because they're bright-faced. You can see it in their faces. The eyes and faces communicate this, and those who are even a little pious, they're going to feel themselves attracted, even if they don't understand it. So when Nala Kuvera and Manigriva saw Krishna before them after emerging from the Arjuna trees, they were so purified that they automatically started offering Krishna profuse prayers to glorify his many qualities. Now, that's a huge change from when they saw Krishna's representative, Narada Muni, thousands of years before that, when they were drunk and naked and they didn't even notice that Narada Muni was there, probably. What to speak of their realizing that he was a saintly person. They were so ignorant. Now, after all the reflection and purification, they understood, simply by dint of their purification, that the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is before them. And there's value in that. So they naturally felt compelled to start praying and glorifying and singing and chanting in his presence. We see this throughout the Bhagavatam, that many personalities, when they come face to face with Krishna, they do the same thing, like Dhruva Maharaj. When he saw Krishna face to face after performing many, many austerities and chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, he was not performing austerities to see Krishna exactly. He was performing austerities because he had a grudge after being hurt from his father for not allowing him to sit on his lap. But Krishna was so merciful that even though he had a material desire attached to his austerities and his chanting, he was so merciful that he presented himself in front of Dhruva, and immediately when Dhruva saw, when Krishna appeared, he fell flat and just started chanting and started glorifying and praising and worship. So it seems to be that it's a natural thing that happens when you somehow come to see Krishna face to face, as you can do nothing else but praise him. So just imagine, what would you do if Krishna suddenly appeared in your presence? What would you say to him in that moment? Would you say, "Hey Krishna, how's it going? You want to hang out?" Well, no, you wouldn't say that. You would be so overwhelmed that you would be speechless. The Lord of all creation is standing in front of you. So when you're in the presence of Krishna, there's nothing to do but worship him, and after worshiping him, or while you're worshiping him attentively, wait and listen for an instruction. So now in the previous verse, Krishna is described as smiling in response to Nala Kuvera and Manigriva's reciting prayers, because as described in the verse today, Krishna knew already when Narada Muni cursed them that the outcome of the curse would offer them incredible mercy. And so we learn here that the result of the curse was that Nala Kuvera and Manigriva eventually were blessed to see Krishna face to face in his Vrindavan pastimes. Sometimes it's difficult to understand what is going on in our personal lives and in the lives of other people, because we are only seeing a small picture frame of the whole story. We're only seeing a small fraction of a person's story without knowing how the story will end. We often will enter into a person's life drama in the middle of it without understanding how they got themselves to that point, or knowing what happened after you left them. And this happens to me all the time in the hospital when I go room to room. Sometimes I will go in a patient's room and they and their family members are in a lot of pain and despair. They're feeling hopeless, and the family's crying what to do, and they have no idea how to move forward. Or I know one case, I had a homeless man who was dying, and he had been estranged from his family for many years, and he wanted to say goodbye. It occurred to him, before I die, I want to say something to my family, but his cell phone was dead, the battery was dead, and he had lost his cell phone charger, and all his telephone numbers were in the phone. So there he was, sitting there in this dilemma, knowing he was going to die in a few days, what to do. And I left him at that moment to come home. And during the night, I worried about him. I thought, wonder how their story is going to work out. I wonder, how the story will end. Just like a book, if you're in the middle of a book or a movie and you wonder how the plot's going to end. And often I will go back to people I worried about overnight, and I will go to see how they fared through the night and what happened. And often I will walk in and the whole thing has changed. They've solved their problem. They're happy. They're no longer in pain. And I'm like, I worried all night about that. It was ridiculous because I didn't know. Krishna knew. I didn't know how the story would turn out. So we are limited in our ability to really know what's going on in the lives of other people around us and in our own lives. We don't even know the end of the story of our personal life drama. None of us has any idea how our lives are going to unfold in the next moment. But Krishna, who is within our hearts and the hearts of all others, he knows the past, the present, and future of all of us, and so he knows how all of our stories will end, even before the personal drama unfolds, before it begins. Krishna knows already what you're likely to do next. He knows the outcome. Prabhupada comments in the purport of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 39, where Arjuna is asking Krishna to destroy his doubt about what happens to a worldly-minded person who is, in the beginning, takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly-mindedness and does not attain perfection of love for God. Prabhupada says, Krishna knows past, present, and future perfectly, but no one knows him. Only Krishna and Krishna-conscious devotees can know what is what. So Krishna was smiling in that verse, in this previous verse, because he knew right from the beginning that Narada's curse would ultimately bless them with Krishna vision. Krishna knew when Narada cursed them that it would help them return to their original constitutional consciousness as Krishna's loving servants. So just to ensure Narada's words came true, Krishna arranged for them an opportunity to see him face to face. And all of this is to say that everything that happens to us in the material world is Krishna's strategy to lift us out of our material concept of life. It is Krishna's way of attracting us back to him, and sometimes we are so ignorant that we have to suffer a whole lot before we take shelter of the Lord in our heart, seeking comfort and guidance. And it really simply is a question of a change of heart. It requires changing our attitude as competitors of God to becoming servants of God, and it really doesn't matter in the ultimate issue whether we call God Allah, Jehovah, Buddha, Krishna, Christ. Although we are particularly fond of the name Krishna because it includes all those names, my experience is that a Muslim and a Buddhist who understands that there's a supreme being, they make progress. Often they will be guided by Muhammad or Buddha to come to the Hare Krishna movement. That was my experience. So Prabhupada explains that the only thing preventing us from getting free from this material consciousness is our own desire to have it. That's the problem, is that we don't truly desire to see Krishna face to face and get out of this material world. We really don't. If you think about what it would require to give up everything and just surrender to Krishna, most of us, including myself, will go, well, yeah, well, after that, or when that happens, or I have to tidy up, I have to finish up that thing, and then I will give it all to Krishna. Bhagavad Gita says, all of them, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. And Prabhupada explains that Krishna responds to everyone, every devotee, non-devotee, devotee. He responds to everyone, and he reveals himself according to that degree of surrender. So even if a person wants to be forgetful of Krishna and doesn't want to think of Krishna, then Krishna will help him. Forget him forever. He will give him the philosophy and the arguments and all kinds of good reason why not to surrender to Krishna. Or if a person prefers to merge into the Brahmajyoti or understand God in an impersonal way as light and just living force, Krishna will give him that intelligence as well. So as in the same way, if we desire to know Krishna in truth and engage in loving connection with him, then Krishna will give us the intelligence. So it's really about having that desire. If we don't have that desire, cultivating that desire and praying to Krishna, please give me the desire to love you and serve you unconditionally. Guide me, open all the right doors, close all the wrong doors. I have no idea what my next step is. You make that happen for me. So I'm going to stop here, and thank you very much. I'm wondering if there's any questions or comments. Anybody? Neela. Yeah. What happened?
I was just you mentioned how preachers, they go out there, they're insulted. I was reflecting what this Saraswati Thakur says that our spiritual body is fed by chit rakta, or spiritual blood. And that spiritual blood comes from being misunderstood, neglected, and ignored.
Yeah.
So it seems that these trials, like Nalaguvera, Manigriva, they're actually very good for us. Like when you think of, like, for example, Krishna is the taste of water. Krishna is the taste of water. When do we appreciate water more? When we have it at our fingertips, or we just walked across a desert? Then we really appreciate it. I just wanted to share that yesterday on the Harinam, you could really see this bright-faced, a lot of the devotees who were leading the Harinam and chanting, that people were really, really appreciating. One drunk guy, he gave $20 and took a Bhagavad Gita. Another guy I was out there trying to distribute books, but I didn't say anything to him. He just walked up to me and gave me $50 because he was hearing and appreciating the devotees.
That's amazing.
And one person, he was homeless. He took a Bhagavad Gita. He gave like 35 cents, and then he danced, and then he gave $1 on top of that without being asked to do it. So even those, you might think that they have no capability of doing. Even they have so much piety and so much appreciation for Krishna's holy name.
Yeah.
That's all powerful.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. It's true that the modes of material nature are always competing for supremacy, and when the person comes out who's transcendental to the modes, it's attractive, like a magnet. Any other questions or comments? Yes, in the back. Just speak really loud. I'll try.
That's why Krishna listens to his devotee.
Yeah.
He comes, so no matter that. So he said, this is the way Krishna thinks of his devotee.
That's a really nice story, and it's really true that God knows his own. He knows when you're calling out in heartfelt sincerity, he will respond. Thank you for that. Did you have a question or a comment, Pavika? I thought I saw your hand doing something. Any? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mataya. When you were mentioning at one point that what would you do if you see Krishna face to face, I couldn't help but to share this little story there.
Okay.
If you allow me to.
Yeah.
Long time ago, maybe 24 years ago, my father in his last stages was out of cancer. He was ready to die. And one evening I came and I found him crying. My mother was there. And I said, why is he crying? He said, well, she said, I was writing the names of Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatana Goswami, and I didn't even finish writing it when your father screamed. He said, Krishna is coming. He says, what? He says, yeah, Krishna is coming. He says, what is it? He's right there, don't you see him? And that was the little altar we had. And my mother said, because she said, what would you do?
Yeah.
You mentioned, what would you do? So my mother said, well, if Krishna is there, let's pay our obeisances.
Yeah.
So they just dug. And
Yeah.
and then after that, my mother told me, but one thing he says, please don't tell people about this because it's a personal thing. I don't know, something emotional, and he was crying and crying. He was shy, but it's just something that sometimes you don't know. You mentioned too, we don't know how our lives will unfold. So much so that one devotee at that time, Kushakrata, he was upstairs, and he came down at the last moment when my father was going to leave his body, and he was like right there, like about a few inches. He wanted to see, like what's the outcome of somebody leaving his body. So he told me after some time, he said, what a fortunate soul. I wish I could have a death like that.
Yeah.
And he actually, Krishna fulfilled his desire because Kushakrata Prabhu went to Vrindavan. He also had some problem with his health, and he went back to get him.
Yeah. That's amazing. Krishna has his own way of showing himself and saving us. And it's very personal, the idea that each one of us, that's why, sometimes people feel like, oh God, that's not just or that's not fair. They try to homogenize even in a community, but the reality is Krishna has his own personal way of relating to us, and sometimes it's a kick and sometimes it's a pat, and so I can't be like you and you can't be like me, and I can't suffer your karma for you and you can't.
Yeah, and what it also made me reflect about different things that we cannot understand is like I'm seeing that he just was recently, my father at that time, he only had like about 6 years chanting rounds, a humble person that he was deprived of all his opportunities of wealth because his father, he had a lot of money. He found a cave in which there was a lot of gold, and he was very rich. But something happened along the road with the government and so many things. So he became deprived of nothing, zero, to be just like an orphan. So his whole life he didn't have a mother, no father, nothing, because he died. Then I was just wondering, how is it that a person who just come 6 years previously, he doesn't know so much, and then he has a departure like that. So I was just thinking, we cannot understand.
No, it's not about length of time or knowledge or anything, sophistication in your devotion. It's a heart thing, and Prabhupada said you can become Krishna consciousness in a second. Or you could practice for your lifetime and never get it. That we see too. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.